In the event of a data loss, we would probably, well, first panic.
Well, if I switched on my PC and nothing happened, I'd panic. First thing I'd do.
I'd be very angry. If we lost our data, we'd have great trouble getting it back. So I think the first thing I'd do would be to record any messages that appeared on the screen and then inform our MIS department as soon as possible.
So we look for backups. Very often we don't find any.
Immediately note what is on view on the screen, on the display. Immediately dial 5 for our MIS department.
I wouldn't be able to work, I wouldn't be able to access any of my files, I wouldn't know who I last spoke to, what the last thing I did in one of my accounts. I think I would just basically die.
Most data loss problems are solvable. S&S International, one of the leading specialists in this field, has an average recovery rate of 95%. But it's a sad fact of data recovery life that all too often recoverable data is rendered unrecoverable by users, sometimes even system suppliers, attempting the DIY approach. The data on this drive was actually recovered. Prizing the disk cover away with a pair of pliers is not exactly a high-tech solution, though. Educating users that the first thing to do in a data loss situation is always absolutely nothing should be a priority. And the second thing? Well, that's the focus of this programme.
The most common forms of data storage media in use today, hard disks, floppies, tapes and opticals, hold information as a sequence of magnetic domains bonded onto the surface of the media. Data loss problems occur when the system cannot find, read or translate these magnetic domains into a recognizable form.
Both the magnetic domains and the media are highly stable and resilient, often capable of withstanding exposure to water, indirect heat and impact. A head crash, which scratches the surface of the disk, is probably one of the few types of common system failure which can lead directly to a loss of media. Most data access problems tend, in consequence, to be derived not from damaged media or corrupted magnetic domains, the raw data, but from a failure of the hardware and software designed to find, read and translate the magnetic domains held on the media into recognizable files, databases and spreadsheets.
A misalignment of the drive heads or an electronic failure, perhaps a malfunctioning drive controller, would, for example, render the drive incapable of reading the magnetic domains off the disk. While on FAT-based systems, a corrupted file allocation table would render a system incapable of reading the data quite simply because it would no longer have an address for that data. The FAT is the central reference table storing the location of every part of every file on the disk. Accidental file deletions or high-level formats, probably the most common types of user errors leading to data loss, are incidentally a related problem. The media and the magnetic domains, the raw data, will still exist, at least until overwritten, but the system would no longer have an address for the file. DOS will have defined the disk area as free space.
This basic idea that many data loss problems are derived not from a corruption of the raw data, but from a failure of the hardware and software dedicated to finding, reading and translating the data, dictates that the first thing you should do whenever you experience a data loss problem is nothing. Installing tools after the event is inadvisable. Software tools cannot correct a hardware failure, and the installation process could risk overwriting lost files. Even just switching the machine on, if the problem is hardware derived, could lead to damage to the media.
It's very important not to carry on using the system as soon as you notice any problem with accessing your data. Likewise, don't try and have a go yourself unless you fully understand the nature of the problem. It can be very difficult to determine whether it's a software failure or a hardware fault that actually lies at the root of the problem. And until you know the exact nature, you're likely to only make the situation worse. It's very reassuring to know that we can recover data from over 90% of the recoveries that come into our laboratories, be they software failure or hardware problems. whatever the situation that's actually resulted in lost data. Unfortunately, where someone has actually had a go at DIY recovery, it is likely to lessen the chances of a complete recovery.
S&S International, best known for Dr. Solomon's range of antivirus software, identified the need for a specialist data recovery service 10 years ago. Continual investment over the last decade has now progressed the service, marketed as Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service, to the point at which just about every form of data loss problem derived from a systems failure can be solved. Even partially damaged media or magnetic domains can on occasion be reconstructed. There are two principal aspects to Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service. The first is the hardware-driven side, which extracts an image of the magnetic domains carried on the media. S&S International can recover data from just about every type of drive. Media including optical disc and system, up to mid-range IBMs. If the data is still present on the disk, Dr. Solomon's will get an image. And no software work is undertaken until that image has been achieved.
70% or so of the data recoveries that come through S&S are hardware-related problems, i.e. the hardware doesn't work. 30% are software corruptions. These ones are sorted out by our software engineers with a high degree of success. As far as the hardware goes, very few are actual crash-damaged disks. People perceive them as a crashed hard disk, but simply they don't work. We have a decade's worth of experience in getting hard disks to work, understanding how they fail. It is an extremely complex field. There is obviously every failure has its own characteristics, but we have a lot of experience in recovering data from damaged hard disks. We understand how the hard disks work, and we have an ongoing development program to allow us to recover from even impossible situations.
Once the image of the media has been achieved, the next job is to translate the image into recognizable data. This can be like puzzle solving, with software engineers often instinctively feeling their way around the data, but they don't usually fail. Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service achieves an average 95% success rate. And indeed, the confidence that S&S International have in their abilities is demonstrated in a policy of no fix, no fee. If Dr. Solomon's can't recover your data, and in fact if they can't, probably no one can, then there's no charge. And the company can work with most file formats and operating systems, including DOS, NetWare, NT Advanced Server, LAN Manager and Unix.
At Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service, we choose to work no fix, no fee for two main reasons. The first being if you were to send us a large drive, say a 1 GB drive, and wanted one file from that drive, if you specified that file at the beginning of the recovery, we would deem the job a no fix if we were unable to recover that one file, having recovered the other gigabyte of data. We have always worked no fix, no fee, right from the start of our service 10 years ago. It gives the engineers the maximum flexibility to try different techniques and different systems. If we're unable to recover the data, it costs the customer nothing.
Good afternoon, Data Recovery. Can I help you? Can I have your name, please? And your address?
Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service is designed to be as fast and as easy to use as possible, with professional, comprehensive and confidential help only a free phone call away. If the source of the problem is recognisable from the information you're able to provide, keeping a note of any error messages will be helpful here, as well as making recovery faster, then a verbal estimate of the recovery cost is given over the telephone, with a firm quote based on the information given, faxed over within the hour. Within 4 hours of your media or system arriving at S&S International, a Dr. Solomon's engineer will have fully assessed the data loss problem and confirmed the timescale within which recovery will be possible. The cost of recovery, incidentally, will be discounted by 20% if for any reason S&S International fail to recover the data within 48 hours. Further confirmation of the confidence S&S International have in the speed and performance of Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service.
For most MIS managers, the risk of data loss will continue to be a perpetual worry, and educating users, who may panic or be embarrassed into attempting recovery themselves, is probably the first step in reducing the risks of permanent data loss. Do nothing before you do anything is a lesson that needs learning.
At Dr. Solomon's Data Recovery Service, we pride ourselves in being able to respond to each customer in an individual way. Every recovery is different, and every client situation is different. Our engineers treat every single recovery as a separate project. It may require specialist programming or different treatment. And we want to be able to maintain that level of individuality and specialisation for every client that comes to us in the future.
When things do go wrong, as they will, Dr. Solomon's should be the first port of call. Not because SNS International can absolutely guarantee that your data can be recovered, no one can, but because the comprehensive software and hardware engineering expertise present in the company, expertise that is second to none, gives you the best possible chance that it will be.